a black girl nerd. Thank you, Brooklyn and Jim, for your performances in this series. It's a very, very complicated thing to learn about children abduction. It's something very, very triggering for anyone, whether they have children or not. Starting with you, Brooklyn, as you step into a role that is based on some real life events and the subject content can be very scary for children, how do you prepare yourself mentally to tackle this type of role? Do you think of sad things? How do you approach your prep? How did you approach your preparation?
Well, it's a very complicated thing because you deal with a lot of stuff. Like I had to learn about child abuse, kid abduction, how bad racism can be. And I I learned that the world wasn't all perfect. And when I had to learn about that, my parents tried to keep it almost they tried to keep me happy and because that took a real toll on me.
Mhm.
um but when it came to the scenes, I felt that emotion and what I felt inside, and I brought that to Hildy.
Mhm. With along with that, Jim, playing that role alongside of her is that parental role when you actors are deep in your method and preparing, you feel a natural fatherly instinct for Brooklyn since she's portraying your child on the screen. How do you aid in that preparation as well when those scenes get very dark and deep?
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting process. It was something that I hadn't experienced before, whereby you would have to deal with some quite emotional stuff on camera, and then also have to deal with being with Brooklyn, who is a young 8-year-old girl who has a lot of energy and a lot of positive energy. And there's a great
Mhm.
playfulness about being around Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and young people need that, and so I was very sort of concerned about how you would sort of dive into these really emotional scenes and then make sure that Brooklyn was having a really fun time and that we were getting along and that we were, having a sort of father-daughter sort of bonding experience at the same time. And I think what I realized was that that is what parenting really is like in real life, is that you have to kind of compartmentalize whatever traumatic things are going on in your life. You have to maybe put them to one side and then make sure that the child is having the experiences that they need to have. So it actually was the one thing that sort of connected me to Matt and being a parent more than anything was yeah, you had to go through some traumatic stuff, and me and Brooklyn had to go through some traumatic stuff together too.
Mhm.
So it was just about making sure we trusted each other, making sure that there was a lot of fun and joyfulness in the room, as well as being able to, go to some very emotional places.
What's particularly intriguing about the story is that Hildy is a child detective or young detective. And we don't typically think of children that way, although we appreciate the clear kind of like a clear palette of the mind for children. They can see things that we don't see because they haven't been corrupted by all of the worldly influences that adults have. Brooklyn, with having not had your life experience tainted by so many influences as a young age, do you think that's the makings for a good detective, to have that sort of naivety, or does good detection come with life experience?
I think that you need to learn in whatever you're doing. You need to do some research into that. But I had to do research into acting.
Mhm.
But I feel like as long as you have a passion to do it, and as long as you really want to do it, and as long as you work hard for it,
Mhm.
then you're good.
With your role, Jim, he's alongside his own history. Is he's left the town and now he's returned to the town, and these traumatic incidents have begun to rear their ugly head.
Yeah.
What is the journey like for the audience who is going to see this and build up to what ultimately will be a climactic finish when we'll
Yeah.
at least into the season? What will that journey be like for the audience?
Well, it's something that Matt as the character has very much buried deep, deep, deep down, you know, and slowly as the sort of show unravels itself, you know, this mystery, this thing that happened becomes, you know, higher and higher up to the surface. And I think for all of us while we were making the show, it was just so, we were just so kind of locked into just wanting to know what really happened that day and what, who was involved and why it happened. And you're so aware that it affected the whole town. The disappearance of this young boy, you know, was traumatic for everybody, and how that's affected everyone in the town. So you're, as a viewer, you know, you just can't, you can't bear to not find out what happened to this young kid,
Yeah.
and who was involved, and what secrets are really buried underneath, you know.
All right. Thank you so much, you all. Can't
Thank,
wait for it to continue to unfold. Thank you so much for your time.
thank
Thank
you.
you.